Hey besties, are you ready for Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds' crash-out saga to keep spiraling? Honestly, at this point, I fully believe Ryan is the one steering this meltdown. The more I look at it, the more obvious it becomes that Blake isn't the mastermind behind this chaos. The randomness, the aggression, the impulsive moves, this is Ryan written all over it. I was actually talking to my bestie Richard Fedk, the paparazzo they falsely accused, and I asked him straight up, what are they doing? Why are they acting like this? Who behaves like this? Anyone else would have backed off by now. And Richard just said, it's all ego. That's how he is. He's unhinged. He won't stop until you're ruined. It's like battling a monster, literally. Richard went through absolute hell because of them, so he's always the first person I turn to whenever I'm trying to understand their behavior. And honestly, what they're doing to Baldoni mirrors exactly what they did to Fedk. The patterns are identical. The way they weaponize the court docket as some kind of PR machine, whether to smear Baldoni or stir up a new media headline, it's the same playbook every time. So what happens? Anytime something negative hits them, they lash out with some dramatic filing or bizarre reaction. Last week they resurfaced this old sanctions motion, Rule 11 sanctions, from way back in May. And they brought it back right after the whole Van Zandt situation blew up and the media started calling them out for abusing the legal process through that fake subpoena and that shell company action. That's when they started demanding that Wayfarer withdraw their lawsuits, saying they had no grounds. Meanwhile, Wayfarer responded that all Blake and Ryan were really trying to do was re-argue motions that were already in play. Then, a month and a half later, Judge Lee Moen dismissed the lawsuit entirely. Blake's case? Gone. Ryan's case? Gone. Leslie's case? Gone. Even the New York Times situation? Done. But did that stop Blake and Ryan? Absolutely not. Once summary judgment hit the docket, they immediately filed an ex parte request asking for permission to submit a motion claiming that Steve Sarowitz and Jen Abel didn't understand why they were suing in the first place. They're basically trying to argue this proves Wayfarer filed everything with bad intentions. It's giving pot, meet kettle. They even attached sealed depositions from Sarowitz and Abel, so we can't see them. Obviously, Wayfarer's attorney, Mr. Friedman, responded to this because Blake and Ryan are once again asking for Rule 11 sanctions. He said, on May 19th and 20th, Lively and Reynolds filed Rule 11 motions arguing the Wayfarer party's amended complaint lacked factual allegations and therefore was legally unreasonable. At the time they filed, the court hadn't decided the motions to dismiss, which were based on the same points. Wayfarer argued that Rule 11 isn't meant to challenge pleading issues already in front of the court. Those motions were fully briefed by June 10th, when Blake and Ryan filed their reply briefs. Now, months later, Blake and Ryan suddenly want to add deposition excerpts from Steve Sarowitz and Abel, claiming their testimony proves the lawyers knew the claims had no basis. Wayfarer said this motion should be denied for several reasons. First, they're bringing this months and months late. It's absurdly delayed. It feels obvious they're doing it for PR, partly because Ryan refuses to let anything go, and partly because Wayfarer just filed a summary judgment pointing out Blake's case has no merit. So of course Blake and Ryan needed to fire back with a dramatic know you moment. It's literally giving playground energy. That's how Ryan Reynolds behaves, childish tit for tat. Then there's the safe harbor rule. If you're filing Rule 11 sanctions, you have to give the opposing party 21 days to respond to any new evidence. Blake and Ryan are trying to argue that the new depositions count as new evidence, proving the case was baseless. But that logic doesn't really hold up. Second, Wayfarer pointed out the depositions aren't even new. Abel and Sarowitz were deposed on September 26th and October 3rd. Blake offers zero explanation for why she waited until now, just days after Wayfarer's summary judgment, to fling this filing at the court. The timing screams PR desperation. Wayfarer even said her sudden reliance on those deposition answers shows an obvious attempt to control the media cycle. Yes, you heard that right. Wayfarer essentially said Blake and Ryan are using the court docket as a public relations weapon. They just worded it far more professionally. Third, they said that whether a client can explain their legal claim during a deposition isn't even the relevant issue. Blake is trying to make a big deal out of Sarowitz and Abel not being able to answer certain complaint questions without referring to their lawyers, something completely normal in legal proceedings. But the truth is, a person isn't expected to show up at their own deposition and suddenly explain every factual detail behind their legal claims. Especially when, like in this case, those allegations came from the attorney's investigation and later discovery, not from the party's first-hand knowledge. Yeah, and honestly, it is a weird thing to ask someone. I've sat through, what, 4 depositions now, and never once has anyone asked me something like, "Why did you and your lawyer do this?" Or, "Why did you file that document?" Because in a lawsuit, that's literally why you hire lawyers. Their job is to handle the legal work, the filings, the strategy. Of course, you generally have to approve what they're doing, but lawyers routinely file things you may not even see or fully understand. You're not the legal expert, they are. I don't know the law surrounding every issue I've been sued over or the technicalities behind the cases I've filed. It's not my job to figure out what legal grounds exist. That's what your attorney is for. So when they say that Lively couldn't articulate the basis of her own claims during her deposition, it makes no sense to pretend that what a party personally knows versus what was developed through the public record, other investigations, and discovery should somehow be crucial or decisive evidence of wrongdoing. They basically argue that a party's inability to explain every legal basis behind their claim is not enough to justify summary judgment or sanctions. And honestly, they flipped Lively's own lack of knowledge back on her, which is kind of brilliant. Then comes the kicker. Sarowitz and Abel's testimony apparently ignores other evidence uncovered during discovery, evidence showing there was plenty to support the defamation claim against Reynolds. One document produced by Lively reportedly shows Reynolds, though it's all heavily redacted. And Reynolds, through subpoena, produced documents too. Those documents, still sealed from the public, apparently show multiple examples of him acting with malice and circulating defamatory statements about them. They're literally using Ryan's own evidence against him. They're saying, "You're arguing we had no basis for the defamation claim, but you handed us proof that you defamed us." The evidence also supposedly shows that Reynolds directly tried to interfere with Baldoni and Wayfarer's relationship with WME. Ari Emanuel, has apparently acknowledged that he fired Baldoni from WME. So in short, Wayfarer is saying their claims against Reynolds were not baseless. They were, in fact, supported by Ryan's own written words. That means they likely have communications between him and his WME agent. Maybe texts with Ari Emanuel, maybe messages with executives at Sony or other studios. And honestly, I want to see this evidence so badly. I want to see the text messages Blake turned in. I want to see Ryan's texts. Right now, the public narrative is so one-sided. Wayfarer did this. Wayfarer said that. Wayfarer planted these stories. Wayfarer contacted those reporters. But we still haven't seen what Ryan and Blake were doing behind the scenes because they keep everything under seal. It's wild how much they're trying to hide. And honestly, if you have nothing to hide, you don't hide anything. If the truth is on your side, you'd want everything public so it clears your name. You wouldn't be burying it. They even reference a Deadline article from February 14th, in which Ari Emanuel goes on a podcast and gushes about Blake and Ryan. He says he's known them for over a decade, calls them incredible people, claims they're successful, respected, charitable. As if donating money means you're incapable of being manipulative or harmful. Then he says, "I fired him," referring to Baldoni. Ari claims Blake felt unprotected, she complained, and then these people tried to go after her, so he fired Baldoni. Ari insists Blake and Ryan are good people, doubling down like a ride-or-die publicist. But the thing is, WME knew all of this the whole time. They didn't fire Baldoni because of the behavior. They fired him because of the PR nightmare. They were fully aware of everything that was happening long before any lawsuit was filed. A WME agent has even testified about what he saw as Blake's extortion tactics to gain control. And still, WME only dropped Baldoni after Blake filed the lawsuit. Not before. Not when they allegedly knew what was happening in real time. And Ari making moral judgments is honestly rich, considering his own history. WME has been sued for sexual harassment. Ari himself has been sued for sexual harassment. He paid millions to a former employee. Their office was allegedly a mess. Porn being filmed off hours, adult content left on copy machines, men making disgusting comments about women's bodies, giving them gross nicknames. Ari has been accused of being a sexual harasser, so for him to sit there and label Baldoni a very bad person is a lot. And honestly, I'd love to know whether Ari's name shows up in the Epstein files. I'm not saying he's involved, but I'd love to know. So ultimately, Wayfarer is saying they have solid proof, Ryan's own statements, his own messages, his own documents, that he defamed them and interfered behind the scenes. And that's why they're fighting so hard to keep those sealed documents from being made public. They also say they have evidence showing that Maximum Effort stepped in, took over the marketing, and deliberately shut Baldoni out of the entire process. So when Maximum Effort somehow landed a contract with Sony, they apparently decided the entire marketing plan on their own, without consulting Wayfarer at all. Justin's PR team had to reach out to Sony and its executives just to figure out what was happening. One message said something like, "Danny Megan suggested we contact you," Danny being an exec at Sony, regarding the Maximum Effort content capture happening later this week. "We wanted to know if you could share anything about the creative direction and what exactly is being filmed. We want to make sure Justin can participate and that he's included in the marketing efforts, just like the rest of the cast. Is Sony supporting the Maximum Effort creative? And will any of that material be used as part of Sony's marketing? We want this to be an inclusive project where all talent is represented, not a selective project where certain people are left out." That message came from Matt Mitchell at Jonesworks. Then Jennifer Abel added, "Just to clarify, there may be some confusion. We are absolutely not asking for Justin to be flown to New York or put in the same room with Blake or anyone else. We only want him incorporated in whatever content is being produced, so it's not visibly obvious that he was excluded. And honestly, why on earth would Maximum Effort have the authority to decide whether the director and the IP owner are included in the marketing of the film?" Sony responded, not defending Maximum Effort, but saying, "Our content team is preparing a few pieces for Justin, and they'll send them to you for approval on Monday. The digital team is also sending over a calendar so you can see how the social rollout and content plan will unfold. I'll let the publicity team handle the rest." That was from Danielle Misher, an executive at Sony. So from that response, it's clear they weren't looped in, they weren't kept updated, and Ryan basically elbowed everyone else out to take control of the marketing. Isn't that exactly what Wayfarer has been saying this whole time? And isn't Blake's entire lawsuit built on the idea that the marketing was changed to make her look bad? But no, the reality seems more like her husband's erratic behavior pushed Justin out of the marketing because Ryan wanted to take over a movie he had no right to control. And maybe he couldn't handle standing next to a man who is, let's be honest, more attractive than him, Justin Baldoni. But that's just my opinion. Naturally, because so much is about to be unsealed, Blake's team is throwing a full-blown tantrum. They want an extension until December 19th, a whole month from now. Their letter asks for more time to deal with the sealed records, saying they don't have enough time to comb through the 180 sealed documents, even though not even all of those documents are theirs. And this letter is a mess. They're arguing that they need more time for all 180 sealed exhibits, but only a portion of them even involve Blake or Ryan. Many of the exhibits are from Sony Pictures Entertainment, lots of them. There are documents from subpoenas involving producer Alex Sachs. There's material from Sony, from Angie Giannetti, deposition testimony, and a ton of third-party records. Blake can only speak for the material she submitted. She cannot control what third parties turned in. Yes, there are 180 sealed documents, but fewer than 100 belong to Blake and Ryan. Maybe 80, 85, so the majority has nothing to do with her. This case has a lot of people involved, and she's panicking about the fact that third parties will also be notified. No one knows yet how the judge will respond, but Blake's arguments are scattered. At first, she requests an extension for all sealing issues, pushing the deadline from November 20th to December 8th. Then she brings up the fact that they filed 275 exhibits total, 183 under seal, and complains that they weren't served until after the summary judgment deadline. She claims that more than 100 of the sealed exhibits involve Miss Lively. She also complains that additional sealed documents and deposition testimony involve about 15 third parties. But here's the thing. She has zero standing to speak on behalf of third parties. If those individuals or companies want extensions, they need to request them themselves. Sony, WME, these are huge companies. They don't need Blake Lively acting as their spokesperson. She's accusing the other side of violating procedural rules, saying they misrepresented things to third parties, and basically throwing anything at the wall to see what sticks. Initially, she says she only wants an extension until December 8th, but at the end of her letter, she adds another request, that any third parties who want to continue sealing their materials should be allowed to file one combined submission within a week of the briefing being completed, or by December 19th. So clearly, she's trying everything possible to delay the release of the unsealed documents. She's asking for extensions for people she has no authority to speak for. The emails exchanged between the legal teams are chaotic, to put it mildly. Again, no one knows exactly what Judge Lyman will decide. But Blake can only request extensions for her own material, not for Sony, not for WME, not for other third parties. Wayfarer already said they will not agree to that extended timeline. They agreed to a short 3-day extension and nothing more. They reminded Blake's attorneys that when the schedule was first negotiated, the judge's rules about sealing were discussed, and both sides already knew they would be constrained by those rules. They also reminded Blake's team that they had suggested extending the sealing schedule earlier, and Wayfarer refused because the judge already established that there is a strong public interest in disclosure. With that ruling in place, there is no reason to renegotiate new delays. And they made it very clear Blake has no right to speak on behalf of third parties. Those parties have their own lawyers, and the judge has already ruled that this case is of public interest, meaning transparency is expected. The days of hiding everything under seal are over. Of course, Blake's team fires back, arguing about third parties again. They accuse Wayfarer of miscommunication, complain that they must respond to summary judgment, and insist that they are overwhelmed with filings. But Wayfarer points out that Blake's team misled them for months, telling them they were preparing their own summary judgment filing, only to never file it. Wayfarer prepared based on that promise, and Blake didn't follow through. Then Blake's lawyers repeat that Wayfarer shouldn't speak to third parties. Wayfarer responds, "Please do not speak for third parties. You do not represent them." It'll be interesting to see how Wayfarer formally responds. Judge Lyman hates unnecessary scheduling fights. He's not a fan of legal bickering over procedural housekeeping. I could see him splitting the difference, but the reality remains, Blake cannot speak for third parties. And those third parties, Sony, WME, are massive institutions with their own legal teams. They do not need Blake Lively shielding them. So why is she so desperate to delay the unsealing? Probably because she does not want this information dropping right in the middle of the holiday news cycle. This time of year is always a media storm. Everyone's online, indoors, talking, sharing. Last year at this exact time, Blake's lawsuit dominated the news. We're heading into that same cycle, where coverage ramps up because people are home for the holidays. They don't want this out now, because then everyone will be talking about it at family gatherings, at parties, on social media, on every entertainment show. They want to push it past the chaotic news window. Sure, Blake. Anyway, the crash out is still in full swing. What do you think about all of this? Let me know below. Make sure to like the video, subscribe if you haven't yet, and hit the bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching, besties. Bye.